Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, guys, welcome back. Mission Whitetail, episode number 82. I've got my good Alabama Southern brother here on today, Mr. Kaylan Pope. How are you today, Mr. Pope?
I'm doing good. How are you, Joe?
Buddy, I am doing well. Are there any turkeys left in the state of Alabama, or have you killed them all?
If they are, they're scared. I know that.
I know that's for sure. It seems like every time I get on social media, you've either killed one or had one come in or call one in for somebody else. I mean, you are as good a turkey killing machine as I know of.
We had a good little run there. I got worried, I took a week off, and man, I think I wasn't settled in yet, and I was making some mistakes, and the birds were kind of henned up, and then it finally broke, and when it broke, I got in a rhythm.
Yeah. Man, it was awesome. It was a good year. Around here, it was hit and miss for guys. I don't do a lot of turkey hunting. I used to hunt them almost as hard as you, but that was probably 15 years ago, and they've really cut our stuff down. We used to have 5 birds. You could shoot two in the low country and then three across the state, or maybe it was 5 statewide. Now we're down to 2 birds and no jakes. So the Jake thing, I hadn't really figured that out. Why they actually let people shoot Jakes in some states, don't they?
Yeah, we can shoot them here. Yep.
Yeah, you can't shoot them in South Carolina anymore, which I think is a good thing. Let the thing get a year older.
Yeah, and I feel like even on the high end, probably 3 is enough for any state.
Yeah,
we still are at 4. We were at 5. But, as the hunter populace and hunter recruitment grows, you got to put some limitations out there.
yeah. All right, well, I know you were on your lunch break, and we're going to try to cut this as short as we can, but valuable information, because I know a lot of guys are going through this, particularly this time of year, is getting the ultimate whitetail arrow setup. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about Joel Maxfield, and I was thinking about you. And I said, you know what, Kaylan will be the guy to get on to talk about this, because you do archery stuff and you have Arrows Anonymous and you build a shit ton of arrows throughout the year, and you have over the years. So let's talk whitetail arrows and dive deep into that, from nocks, fletchings, shaft size, weight, inserts. Probably leave broadheads out, because we've just beat to death the broadhead debate of fixed blade versus mechanicals. But let's start at the back of the arrow. How's that sound?
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right, tell me what we're building. Kaylan Pope is building the ultimate whitetail arrow. Let's talk about nocks and what you do to the back end of the arrow.
So when you cut the arrow initially, you want good fit up, good squaring, so that your nock fit up's good. You're not getting more contact on one side than the other, which would kind of throw some inconsistencies in there. But as far as nocks go, what you start looking at is string fit up. And the best way to tell if you have good string fit up is when you knock that arrow, if you'll hold it against the bottom knot of your D-loop, and you can let go of it, and it slides up to the top, because that forward of center, whatever you have on your arrow, when you have a broadhead or a field point on, it's naturally going to make that arrow kind of pick up. So you don't want a nock that's so tight that, let's say, you get it directly in between your 2 knots on your D-loop, and it's not set at the same point. So if you've got one that'll seat itself, it'll click on good, but it still has enough play to let itself settle to the same point every time, that's what you're really looking for in nock fitment. And a lot of people even go into, what serving size and they have certain nocks that they want for the serving size. I can tell you that the boning nocks have always been great for me, and also Victory or the AAE nocks have always been great as well. But I run mostly boning nocks nowadays.
All right, what is your, like, I've been going through some lighted knock issues over the last couple years. What is your stance, or what do you like to what do you like as far as lighted knocks?
So I definitely think, if you're getting deep diving into it, you will see some inconsistencies due to there being a plunger in the lighted knock that may or may not operate the exact same every time. Now, for your average whitetail hunter, we know your average whitetail shot 17 yards. I do believe that a lot of knock 99% of the time will work completely fine. The shot will go where you want it to. Now, if you get into deep dive testing, at 80 yards, you might start seeing some inconsistencies compared to regular knocks. But for the purpose that they serve in the whitetail woods, I don't mind them at all.
Okay. What so is there a brand that you like better than another?
So, a lot of people are going to kill me when I say this, but the reality of this situation is there are no factories in America that are producing a lighted knock. Any kind of small electronics like that is generally coming all out of the same factory in China or wherever it's from. So whether you're getting one brand or the other, it's probably all coming from the same factory, and you can get them for 6 for $16 off Amazon, and it's literally the same exact thing.
Yeah, so I shot nocturnals for a long time and was pretty happy with those. And then I don't know if I got a bad batch or just that something changed with them, but I started having a lot of inconsistencies. A couple buddies shot them and actually had them explode off the string, and I
Yeah.
switched over to the halos. And the halos, they're lighter, they're a lighter knock, and they're really bright. They fire every time. The only thing
Yes.
about those sorry sons of guns, and I love everything about them, is like at night when you're hunting and you go to climb out of the stand, when you disconnect it from your string, it turns on. So you have to cut that thing off every time
Yes.
you take it off your and in the dark, that is a pain in the butt because you got to find that little hole, and you're trying to sneak out of there. So what I've been doing is just leaving them lit till I get back to the truck because I shoot the green ones. So not a huge deal, just a little
Right.
bit of an inconvenience.
Yeah, and so just like you're saying, as far as like if you want to get into really high end lighted knocks, the fire knocks are probably the best out there. Halo's right there with them. But every one of them kind of has their quirks. Just like you're saying, you have to really pay attention to the halo knocks. If you don't hold it down and turn it off, and it wants to turn on, and now there's some other options and stuff now. I've been doing some of the glow wraps where I may see a lot of people start doing that instead of a lighted knock.
Now, tell me about a glow wrap. I haven't even heard of that.
So we've got wraps now that in regular light in the sun, just like anything that glows, they're charging up and they just look plain white. Let's say it's like a plain white topo. But once the sun goes down, and in your split light, in your last light, I don't think that they're bright enough yet to really, draw any attention to you. But once it gets fully dark, they glow pretty good. So you could get in a scenario where you're not having to deal with lighted knocks. You can just shoot that glow wrap, and from the stand, you should be able to say, "Oh, there's my arrow."
Okay, got it. All right, let's move on from knocks to fletchings. I know that you're a big proponent, or I think you are, the Q2s. Also, those new ones you just built for me, I think have the bonings on there. It's not the heat vein; it's the other one. Walk us through your preference.
It's the X.
Yeah, the X. Because I shot heat forever, and then the Q2s that you built up for me, and now these X ones, and I've shot them some. I haven't gotten a ton of reps with them yet, but walk us through fletchings, and I know obviously I wanted to stay away from it, but we're going to have to hit on mechanical and fixed blade just a little bit when we're talking fletchings. So roll with that for a minute.
The whole purpose of the fletching is to give you drag in the back of the arrow to stabilize the arrow. So when you're looking at, giving yourself the optimum drag as quiet as you can without parachuting, without losing speed, uh, you start looking at profiles. And so the vein that I've really been pushing a lot lately and using a lot lately is the new Boning Atlas and Alpha. It's the same profile, but it's two different materials. One of them's stiffer like a tack. One of them is more like an AA Max. Uh, so you get two options there. But what they did different is the torque apex. So the high point of the vein is actually in the dead center almost of the vein. So it reduces flutter on the back side of the vein as they're correcting. So they're super, super quiet. And that also gives it, they're like a 2.7. So you're getting a lot more surface area. So the more surface area you have, uh, the more drag that you get out of it and the more ability to steer. So when you're looking at your vane configuration, like we know you shoot mechanicals. You like low profile vanes. We do a low profile 4 on you because you have enough drag to control the head that you're shooting. Now, let's say somebody likes to shoot an iron wheel wide. You may have to go to a a high profile 4 to get enough drag uh, to control that head. And there's a little bit of FOC play in there too. So, like, once you get up towards, the 16, 17% FOC, it starts creating drag, and you can go back to 3 fletchings. But if you have a low amount of FOC, like 10, 11, 12, you may have to go to a 4 fletch and a high profile to get the control to control what you want.
So the point there, guys, that are listening is you got to determine what broadhead you're going to shoot, and then look at your fletchings and how you're going to configure them. And it's nothing wrong with testing them, right? Testing them out, in wind, testing them out at longer yardages, just to see what vane configuration is going to steer the best for you. But I'm hearing boning. I've heard that, once with the Knox, now with the fletchings. Great company. I mean, I think that's a great company, and they build some high speed quality stuff.
And they do, and man, they've been around as long, or if not longer, than anybody. And dude, they're it's just hard not to use their stuff, because if they say it's lick and stick, you don't have to prime. They prime them at the factory. They're not washing them. They're not trying to get primer off or trying to prevent primer from getting on. They do what they have to do, and then they prime it. And so that's one less step, one less inconsistency for the consumer to have to deal with at home, and it's less money you're having to spend in the long run on another product.
Yeah, no, they seem to make real good stuff. I mean, I shot the heat vanes forever and love those, and now these X, I'm excited to give those a try. I guess we could talk a little bit about wraps, and maybe the weight on the back end of the arrow. So, in a perfect world, in a whitetail setup, wraps, they're cool to look at because the designs are so different and can really look cool. But a lot of guys don't care about looks; they care mostly about function. Now, obviously, if you got a wrap on there that's got some white, you can see some blood, you can see some guts, you can determine some hit there where you hit the animal. Walk us through, your thoughts on wraps, and whether you should add that extra weight to the back end or not, or what your thinking is there.
So there's multi-purpose in adding weight to the back of an arrow too, as much as there is maybe reason not to. What a lot of people don't realize is when you add that wrap to the back, every vein you add to the back, even knock weight, it actually stiffens the arrow up. Opposite of when you add weight to the front of the arrow, it loosens the spine. So let's say that you want to shoot, you don't want to shoot at 300 because you're going to be a little bit too heavy for what you want. You know that a 350 is close, but you're not sure if it will work. You could wrap it, stiffen it up a little bit, and it may end up tuning just fine. Maybe perfect. In a scenario where I wouldn't want somebody to wrap the arrow is if you're really starting to get down into like that below 12% FOC, where you could start running into some flight path issues. you may want to really question, maybe switching to a different shaft if you want to wrap it or just not wrap it at all. Uh, the big positives of the wrap is, kind of protecting your carbon, not having to scrape off veins with a knife. You can just unwrap them, warm them up and unwrap them, then rewrap them and fletch them. And colors. It's just a stylistic kind of deal. Now, in 98% of setups in real world scenarios, you would never be able to dictate a difference in penetration or flight from whether the arrow was wrapped or wasn't. But there are cases.
Gotcha. Yeah, the thing I just picked up here is I didn't realize you could stiffen your arrow up by putting the wrap and the weight on the back. So that's pretty knowledge point right there. So that's good to know. If you're getting some tuning issues and you're right on the cusp, take a wrap off, add a wrap on, and that might tune it right up.
Correct.
All right, cool. Let's move on up to the front of the arrow before we actually get into the shafts. We went with a titanium, really light, tough insert on my build this year because I'm trying to go ultra light to test that out. Walk us through, again, we're talking whitetail specific here. We're not trying to shoot rhinos, elephants, and Cape buffalo. Tell us your go-to on your inserts and what you like there.
So even on my arrows that I produce, it is almost the exact same thing that we did with your arrows. It's just a different material. Now you're using a pretty high end, pretty pricey material, but its hardness is worth it compared to kind of what I put on. You could do a little more with yours than what I would recommend with mine, but it's the same system. So what I'm looking for these days in an insert and an insert system is exactly like yours. You have a hit insert that's deep in the arrow. So what that does is when that arrow impacts, you're not getting so much flex at the very front of the arrow. It throws that flex point on initial impact deeper in the arrow. There's more flex to have, so it's not as likely to snap if it were to just take a dead hard stop impact. So that hit insert being down in the shaft really kind of pushes that flex point towards the middle of the arrow and gives it a lot more forgiveness not to break. And then when we went to the outside of the arrow, we put you an end cap or a half sleeve, or even on mine, an aluminum sleeve on the outside, so that once that flex and once that initial impact does happen, it can't mushroom the front out. So it really locks down the outside to the inside while pushing everything deeper into the arrow so that you can keep driving on a hard impact.
Yep. No, that I have. We've shot some big stuff in Africa, especially, and elk size animals, and all the arrows with that hit with that insert that's in the arrow. I've never had one splinter or break up front. Now I've had them, go halfway through the animal and then go off running in their shoulder while they're running, break the arrow, but not up front. So that's a whole different animal.
And that's what we're looking for. Yep, that's what we're looking for. You can't always prevent one from snapping, but if we can prevent it from stopping the kill, that's what we're looking for.
Yes, sir. Yep, getting all the way through him, even if the air's still in him, you're getting 2 holes in him and a big hole. So yeah. All right, glue. Is there a type glue that you like more than others for fletchings, for inserts? Because I've played around with that some, and just. I don't know that I've settled on anything particular.
So you're gonna hear it one more time. Uh, in my years, I played with a lot of stuff, and I've ran into a lot of issues with some stuff. There was some stuff that I had did great, but I can tell you, since I've swapped to boning products, it just works. You don't have the same issues. There you can use epoxy for some stuff like hit inserts. I usually don't. I use the boning arrow lock, and on the back of the arrow, I use their blazer bond. And like 2-3 seconds in the jig, and that thing's already sealed up and heated, whether it's on the shaft or on the wrap, and it's locked in. You can pull them out of the jig and yank on them. They're not coming off. They in those situations with a company that's been around that long, it's you can really see the detail and the experimentation that they put in their products. Because I've used some stuff where it's like, it would work sometimes, sometimes it wouldn't. Everything would kind of have to be perfect, but the boning adhesives just work. I'm a big fan too, like for inserts of a rubberized glue. I want to be able to I don't want a clean shear if it hits something. I don't want it to be so hard when it makes an impact that it just shears and breaks. I want a little bit of give there to take that impact. And so their arrow lock is rubberized too. So I really love that.
No, that's great. And you know, it's like you say, they've been around for so long. They have tested their stuff for years and years and years. And when you're talking about it, you have built thousands and thousands and thousands of arrows and had hundreds and hundreds of hunters that have gone out with your builds and shot them into a lot of animals. And I mean, you've collected data and research over the years. And look, you're not paid by any of these people, right? I mean, you're a guy that is passionate about it and got no dog in the fight. So you legitimately want the guys to have the best stuff available.
Correct. And two, it's just like you're saying, especially for whitetail builds specifically, because that's what I love. I know that's what you love, even though you shoot multiple species. We love whitetail hunting. So when you're talking about whitetails, when I started doing this, playing with weights and stuff, it was my idea to try to build the first driven set of whitetail data, shot placement, and weight, uh, and keep up with it to kind of derive what would the perfect whitetail arrow be. And I think that, all of us have kind of ended up in the same place, like anywhere from that 400 to 440. I mean, and with the advancements in the last couple years, this is what I want to touch on, especially yours. Like, if I could, when you can get a hyper light material like titanium and get the structural integrity that we used to have to front load stainless steel that was super heavy with, well, now you don't have to do that, and you can use aluminum and titanium to get that front end strong like you want and still have a speedy, hard hitting arrow. I just think we're at a really, really great place for whitetail hunters to really be able to get a super tough, super quick arrow.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. We'll talk about arrow shaft selection now, but I think guys are gravitating way more back to that 400ish. Most of them in that 450 range, and I shot 470 all last year, and well, really the last 3 years, and that's a great weight. Just excited to try this lighter arrow this year because getting a little bit older, shoulders, from sports and stuff, getting beat up a little bit. Man, if I can get to where I'm shooting 65 to 68 pounds versus 74 pounds, I'll be able to draw it easier in cold weather, be able to hold it back longer. And if I'm getting the same amount of penetration, why on earth would I not want to do that? So I can't wait to test those out some. Let's talk. We got a few more minutes here. I know you're on your lunch break, but tell me, let's talk about diameter of shaft, the shafts you like. I know you make some arrows yourself. Let's talk about also the coating. Like I have found, I don't know if you have found this, but like the ice coating, I think is what it's called, seems to penetrate pretty good when they're coated. But yeah, I've planted the seed, fire away, because I know you got a ton to say about arrows, arrow shafts, and the way they're built.
So when you get into diameter, I've noticed you and me, we like a 5 millimeter. And you'll notice a lot of these things I'm saying about arrows, when you go back to my shaft, the addict, that's what I implicated in that arrow. The two piece up front, lightweight aluminum, but it's still sturdy. But when you get into diameter, you see a lot of people gravitating to a 4 millimeter. Now, I work on bows too, and I can tell you what I've seen out of a 4 millimeter. When they get that 4 millimeter, the wall is not as thick, And even though it's a 250 spine, just using that number, the dynamic spine, meaning when it's fired and when it's flexing, actually may be a 300 because it doesn't have the surface area to support how stiff the spine actually is. It's the rest of the arrow that's a little too weak. So it hits like kind of a medium ground. So what you see in a lot of people when they go to these 4 millimeters, they come see me and they're like, hey man, I'm getting some funky flight. Well, we start shooting it and we're getting huge left tears. Well, that means that they're underspined. And they're like, well, it's a 250. Well, yes, but you got to think when you start reducing diameters, reducing wall thicknesses, you pay for it somewhere. To me, with a 5 millimeter, you get less wind resistance, just as much wind resistance almost as a 4 millimeter, but you still stay in that good range of wall thickness that whenever you look at a spine chart, you're not going to run into any trouble when you build it. If it says it'll do it, it'll do it. It's still a smaller diameter. I would argue that the penetration is almost as good as a 4 millimeter. I mean, it's half the size of a standard. It's just really hard for me to understand why you would want to sacrifice potentially tune and a little penetration to go to a 4 millimeter when a 5 millimeter will do everything a 4 millimeter will do, I feel like, better and more consistently.
Man, I could not agree more. We've tried them all. We've shot the 4 millimeters, and there's tuning issues after tuning issues, and then what comes in as hunters, you might get those things to tune perfect, but then you torque your bow a little bit. When you're having to bend around a tree and you've taken it a little bit out of tune, and that 4 millimeter is going to show up way more on that than it will on the 5. So you have to look at it from a practical. Yeah, I mean, on paper, the 4 millimeter is going to penetrate better, and I've seen that. I've seen that. It's not a lot like you mentioned, but then we're not hunting on paper. We're hunting in the field where it's windy, where you're torquing your bow. There's a lot that can go on. So I am in 100% alignment with you that the 5 millimeter is the shaft size. You do sell the Attic shafts through Arrows Anonymous, and I have some of those and like them and shot some critters with them this past year with those arrows. I've got the HLRs now from Victory. I think you like those as well. Obviously your arrows are awesome. Tell us, are there other arrow makers or shaft makers out there that you like as well, or what's your go-to on that? I like to talk brands, especially when there's no real dog in the fight, other than obviously you having your own shaft that you do provide, guys.
So I'll say this: my arrows are a Mitsubishi Carbon, which is a Victory Carbon.
Yep.
It's sourced through them. My tolerance, I just pay for a little bit tighter tolerance. There's some differences there. So I'm partial to Victory. Easton also makes I can tell you right now, the straightest arrow that I've ever measured was like the Easton Parallel Pros. But they have metal aluminum cores in them, but I measured like 30 of them and they were all like perfectly straight, every single one of them. Now they're real heavy, but I was very impressed with that. I was like, man, that's kind of crazy. So Easton's very great. Another very great one is Black Eagle. Black Eagle actually makes a very high quality arrow. A lot of people be surprised in rolling and looking for deviations in straightness. Black Eagle is probably more consistent than anybody else. If you buy a set and they're supposed to be .001, all 12 will be .001. Whereas you might get into some of the Victories and some of the Eastons where 7 or 8 are .001, then you might have a .002 in there. Now, when you cut it down, it's probably going to go away. But Black Eagle's usually on the money with it. And I would say, that's probably it. I really like Victories. Victory makes a phenomenal arrow, even to the point of when you look at the HLR. Have you noticed how much smaller the weave on that arrow
Oh
is than like a
man, yes.
TKL? So it's almost like a 1K carbon, like the Ultra Views are. There's a lot of detail and a lot of experimentation, a lot of engineering that went in to get that arrow specifically. Uh, So, and if I had to make, if I could work at Victory, if I had to make a perfect whitetail arrow, I would take a RIP TKO and a HLR, split them in half, pull the wall diameter up a little bit, put a two-piece on the front, and there we go. There we're at.
Yeah, that would do it. Yeah, I obviously shot a lot of stuff with the Victory arrows. Love them. But you get down to like exactly what you said. You start splitting hairs, right? I mean, there are a lot of good arrow companies out there, but we like tinkering with the stuff and playing with the different arrows and testing it all out. And I am looking forward to shooting these HLRs into some critters here in a couple months when we get over to Africa. So that's going to be a lot of fun to try those out.
Well, you're gonna have a lot of jaws drop when you start shooting those HLRs with that titanium up front, and these African animals are dying. People are not gonna believe it.
No, 366 total arrow weight. No, they're not going to believe it at 67 pounds of bow weight. And we're going to be shooting
Yep.
700-pound kudu and 500-pound wildebeest with a mechanical. So I always say we're not going to get into the mechanical fixed blade debate, but somehow it always comes up. All right, well, so there we have it, guys. Boning is your go-to. Did we talk about insert brands? Did we talk about which insert brands you like?
No, and I'll tell you this, just touching on inserts real quick. It seems that we went through a period of time where you almost had to go aftermarket to get some of your stuff that you wanted, but now it seems like manufacturers are starting to catch on and catch up. And so, like, if you go look at the HLRs, there's like 6 or 7 different inserts that you can get that'll probably get you where you want to be. Now, like yours, when you start getting into titanium or anything like that, you may have to go to Podium Archer and get those, or Ethics and get something similar like that. And if you're really, let's say you're doing a trad build and you need a lot of weight up front, you're going to probably have to outsource that. And you would go to Ethics for something like that. But man, I'm really, really impressed with how manufacturers have started paying attention to what guys have wanted, and they've started adapting that into what they offer.
That's awesome. Yep. Cool, man. Well, I know you got to get back at it. I appreciate it, and we will have you on for part 2. Maybe we'll get into some bow tuning stuff. I think that'd be great because you are so dadgum knowledgeable and just have enjoyed getting to spend time with you basically all through internet and Instagram and text over the years. But have appreciated all the coaching and knowledge that you've passed to me as far as bows and arrow building and all that. So I am very, very thankful for what you do and the amount of guys you've helped.
Well, I appreciate you, and I have my ups and downs day to day, and y'all have watched it, and y'all have always continued to support me and been there for me, and I can't thank you enough.
No, brother. Thank you, man. We'll do part 2, and we'll get some bow tuning stuff on here. I think that'll be great. Maybe we can hit on that in June and or even July. That's what we ought to do. When I get back from Botswana, we'll get together, talk about the arrows, and then go through some bow tuning stuff.
That'd be awesome.
All right, brother. I'm gonna hit stop on this, and I appreciate it. Hang on just a second.